stands to go. Lead me, run like you've never run before. A voice from the underground, giving room to breathe, not be drowned. So die if you get the chance. Better men than you've been, let this dance to go. Leave me, run like you've never run before. I have seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me away. To go, leave me, run like you never did. No, believe me, run like you've never run before.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast brought to you by the Scottish Rugby blog. I am Cammy Black. Joining me tonight, we've got Craig Manson. Good evening, Craig.
Hi all, how we doing?
And we've got Johnny McGinty. Good evening, Johnny.
Hello, good evening.
We've got some bits to get through tonight. The big news, though, is that our live pods are back on. It was cancelled.
Come
Now
on.
it's back on. Thank you very much to Portobello Rugby Club, who have approached us after hearing that the live pods were cancelled and offered to have us at their Super Saturday event. So on the 19th of March, in the afternoon, we are going to be at Portobello Rugby Club. They've got a whole Super Saturday event planned with the games on. I think there's going to be things like touch rugby, various bits of fun like quizzes, and we're going to be there kind of hosting and doing some match analysis and other bits and bobs. Might do some live hands in the ruck and some Portobello special crap call-offs if we can get that sorted. So if you're in the Edinburgh area and you don't fancy playing city centre prices for a pint and want to watch the game, come down and see us whitter on before and at half time and afterwards. I think it's free to get in. So you'd be more than welcome to come and join us.
The beer will be cheaper, but we'll be talking. So swings and roundabouts, really.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, that's that. So let us know if you're coming down. It'd be good to see some of you. It's the first time we've done it, so it should be fun. I think we've got Craig and Johnny. You're both there. We've got John Anderson and Ian here going to be joining us as well. So it'll be five of us. And my mum's going to be there. Big fan, podcast biggest fan.
Absolutely, yeah.
Regularly mentioned on the Patreon feed. So shall we start with a bit of news tonight?
Go for it.
Craig's got his black shirt on for a reason. You might as well let him do it.
It's a dark blue shirt, thank you very much.
Do you want to tell us what's happened, Craig?
Don't, I'm filling up. I can't do it anymore. I can't go on anymore. Magnus, why? Why?
So yeah, that's news today that Magnus Bradbury's signing for Bristol Bears from next season. He's leaving. He's exiting the cult, Craig.
No, he's not exiting the cult. He got chucked out the cult.
He's been ejected.
He didn't leave. He didn't leave. I told him to go.
Normally what happens in cults is you kind of go and kind of track him down and drag him back in. that's normally what happens.
Apparently, he has gone rogue, and we're going to have to send out like a film crew to start asking him questions and filming him on his doorstep and things like that.
I mean, we'll get onto the ERC later, but I mean, Embra fairly stacked in the back row as it is, Craig. It's obviously he's been a big player for Embra for a few seasons. We've talked about his form being a bit up and down on the pod before. It's probably a good move for him, really.
I think, to be perfectly honest, he if hopefully it's a big money move for him. He deserves a good move, and everybody, we've got these guys coming through, and maybe he's seen the writing on the wall, because if you look at Connor Boyle, Ben Muncaster coming through, some of the younger lads that are coming through now as well. I think it was I've forgotten his name now. It's the lad Brown, Rudy Brown, I think. There's some phenomenal back rows there. And if he's now he's a Scottish internationalist. If he can get a couple of years of good money and play in a different championship, it's going to make him worth more. It's going to make him. He'll still get to play for Scotland if he can. So yeah, I don't. I'm not actually that. I'm upset, but I'm not upset. If you understand what I mean. He's going to be missed, but I think he deserves a good move.
Yeah, it's not always been easy for Scottish players to kind of transfer their form down south, though, Johnny. I'm kind of thinking, obviously you got Johnny Gray and Stuart Hogg down at Exeter, and they're doing fine. Do you know but it's, I don't know. I guess it's the risk of going and being a small fish in a big pond, as opposed to being the big fish in the smaller Scottish pond.
Exactly, and the idea of Scottish players going down to the Premiership with the hope of being a week in, week out starter and doing well is a pretty new thing. Like, for every Sean Lamont 10 or 15 years ago, there's 20 other players that would go down and play once every 6 weeks and come on as a subby. And I mean, that's kind of a little bit of what's happening to Hugh Jones now as well. But in the main, I think the Scottish players in the last few years that have gone to the Premiership, Johnny Gray, Stuart Hogg, Adam Hastings, have gone down, Doohan and Suz this year as well, to be a starter and a fixture in the team. I hope that's going to happen for Magnus, but there's a lot of back rows at Bristol as well. They're not exactly shy either.
Yeah, I guess that can be a good thing though, Craig. It kind of pushes you on. It's pretty brutal in the Premiership that if you one bad game and you're dropped, and if the guy ahead of you or two guys ahead of you are in form, then it's a hell of a job to fight your way back in. And maybe at Edinburgh and Glasgow, there's a bit more rotation there, and even if you have a bad game, you'll probably get a chance in a few weeks to kind of have another crack.
Yeah, I think, but also there is quite a lot of rotation down in the Premiership because of the amount of games they have to play. So you do see a fair bit. You do get your chance. But also, if you look at the social media that surrounded the move today, Bristol's announcement, etc., I don't think Bristol. It's not like this. They've just announced one wee page saying we've signed Magnus Bradbury on a short-term loan deal just to get us through a tough patch. He's being announced as a star signing. So I think they're fully expecting to use him.
Yeah. Go on, Craig.
Also, the other thing was the rumor was that it was going to be Bill Mata that was going to Bristol. So obviously with Bill being injured, has this moved on to Magnus, or was it Magnus originally that was going to be the guy, and it was the rumor mill got it slightly wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting with Bill Mata because I get the impression, and certainly the last time he re-signed, is that he's just very happy in Edinburgh, and I think he's very aware of what can happen to Pacific Island players if they go elsewhere. I mean, you look at, we look at what happened to Uncle Big Nax when he went to Paris and then came back to Glasgow and then didn't go to Ulster.
Yeah.
It's you get your game time managed, you're well looked after. There's the kind of pastoral care there as well, and I think the SIU have been particularly good at that. So I don't know. I kind of a few seasons ago, I think I was maybe worried about Bill Matter going and leaving Edinburgh. One, I think there's more depth there, Craig, but also he seems quite comfortable and happy.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, I think everybody, is starting to get a little bit more happier at Edinburgh anyway, since the aforementioned shouty man left. So we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see how it goes.
Other news then, Johnny, you've got a back row signed. Rory Darge is
yeah, of course he's resigned. Yeah, I was really excited about that the other day, and then I've clearly just completely forgotten. No, I mean, it's no secret that I love Rory Darge. Was very pleased when he came along from Edinburgh. He's done nothing but get better and better basically since he did come along. He was about the only good thing about Scotland a couple of weeks ago, so pleased to see him sticking about. I can't believe I forgot about it. I'm going to blame the Rona for that. It's the brain fog.
Should we talk about the ERC then?
Nope.
We can talk about it as much as you want.
Do you want to just talk about Edinburgh, Johnny?
Well, let's get Glasgow out the way first. Then.
Right. Right. In the group chat, everybody. Well, I say everybody. You, John, and Ian in particular, I think, are quite down on the current Glasgow regime and the way things are going. But Glasgow have got the same kind of. How come Glasgow and Edinburgh are pretty much matching the number of wins and losses they're getting, but Edinburgh fans seem optimistic and Glasgow fans are calling for Danny Wilson to go? It doesn't, just even on paper, they're fairly evenly matched. So what's the difference for you, Johnny?
I think it's the way that we lose when we do lose. Like, once it starts to go wrong for Glasgow, it goes wrong spectacularly. And it's just like, there's no shape. For some reason, we always seem to be one injury away from the entire backline being boys played out of position, which I don't really understand. Once we start to get behind and our heads go down, our shape completely disappears, our tactics melt. And it's just, I don't know, there doesn't seem to be any resilience to Glasgow. And I think it's because of the game plan that they've put in, or the way that they're instructed to go out there. I think once they are facing a bit of adversity, they don't know how to deal with it. And that worries me.
Yeah, but, and hear me out on this, if you're winning games, then the game plan works or must be working at points. So is it then in the personnel and the execution? And is that the issue? Is it that you've got the likes of Ryan Wilson, and Ryan Wilson is I don't doubt is an exceptional social secretary, but there's an argument to say that you don't make your social secretary the club captain for various very good reasons. I wonder whether it's a player problem and a mindset problem more than it is a Danny Wilson and a coaching problem.
I don't think it's fair to totally absolve the players of any blame, because when it comes down to it, during the game, it's up to the players. I wouldn't have Wilson as captain. I said already I'd have Ali Price as the captain, on-field captain, certainly. I think that there is an element that the players are struggling, but I wonder how much of that is to do with, obviously with Edinburgh, with Mike Blair now, you get the impression that the players are able to kind of take ownership a bit of the game plan and seem to have an idea of what they're going to do and a bit of their own input. And I wonder how much that there is in Glasgow. Danny Wilson doesn't ever seem like much of an authoritarian coach, but the Glasgow players, I think, are better than the way they're reacting when they start to go behind in games. And I wonder if it's because they think that they're not able to adjust on the fly, or not. They don't have not the tools, but they don't have the opportunity to adjust on the fly if they need to.
Yeah. Craig, what's your take on Glasgow? Because is it just kind of like typical Glasgow pessimism?
It's a difficult one because 2 or 3 weeks ago they'd just beaten Leinster and they were kings of the world, and Danny Wilson was forgiven, and so I find it difficult to try and work out exactly what's going on. One thing I will say is that Johnny is right. We're looking at a team that when they lose big, and they lose big against not proper teams, as John Anderson would say. But then on other things they'll go down to 14 men with a red card and they'll win a game because they seem to all come together. I honestly don't understand it. Some of it, I think, for me, it looks like there's an awful lot. There's an awful lot of players overplaying at certain times and trying to win the match, to try to do a Scotland and win the match themselves, and when things are going wrong. But then Glasgow were very, very unlucky at the weekend. Nothing went right for them. Like a ball that came to someone's hands would have normally have been caught, bounced off their chest, or a try that they would sometimes be given, was not given. Now, I think the try side of things, Wilson doesn't help himself when he's on the field, and so he automatically, the referee's looking for stupid things, and what would sometimes be judged as a glancing blow and wasn't actually obstruction. Well, it's Ryan Wilson. Of course, it's going to be an obstruction because he's always trying that sort of thing in a referee's mind. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
I saw Sam Johnson wrestling on the floor with one of the Scarlets players for a good couple of minutes while play was going on. I'm sorry, mate. Get up off the floor and get back into your team because you're losing. So it's just little bits and pieces that you just see that that just didn't go right on the night, and also they don't help themselves. So I think it's a mixture of the team itself, but also Danny Wilson's not using the team, the players that he's got in the right way. I don't think, because putting you've got, and we talked about it before in the chat, to have we've got Finn Russell, apparently, according to Scotland fans and Glasgow fans, and sometimes some Edinburgh fans and the media, we've got Finn Russell as top man at 10, Adam Hastings is top man, is second in command, and the next one coming through is Ross Thompson. Why is Ross Thompson then sitting on the bench when we've got Dunky Weir in at 10? And that for me is, he should be pushed out and told to lead, because he's a talent, or being told he's a talent. So you have to look at both sides. I think I've got a feeling it's regime rather than players, but there's a really.
I wonder as well how much pressure's coming from above Glasgow with things like that, especially with Ross Thompson this weekend, because he was coming into the Scotland squad. Whether maybe they were saying take it easy on him because he's coming into the squad. Because I don't think it's just Glasgow. I think that happens to Edinburgh as well, because there's for the last few years, there's always been some head-scratching personnel decisions for both teams. And I think quite a lot of the time it comes down to the Scotland coaching setup is dictated more than I think any of us would like on the lineups for the pro teams.
And that was supposed to be the thing this season, wasn't it? That the URC was going to be, there were going to be no games during the international windows. There was going to be rest periods so that the big players were playing, week in, week out. And I think you're right, Johnny, because Blair Kinghorn started for Edinburgh. Adam Hastings, I think, did he play for Gloucester this weekend? Someone will tap.
He did, yeah.
He did. So Hastings for Gloucester, Finn Russell didn't play. So I think that it would seem, it seems likely that the instruction was put Rolf Thompson on the bench, because if Kinghorn goes down or Hastings goes down or the two of them go down, then we're going to need him and we can't risk him. And then that means that you're then playing Dunky Weir, which the astounding thing, I think, is you posted it, Johnny, the kind of Glasgow social media post of here's Dunky Weir, Mr. Reliable. And they had the gall to put in the stats. They had a 76% kicking success rate under the title Mr. Reliable. If that was Dunky Weir, I'd be thinking they were sarcastic.
Yes, it's not great.
No.
The thing that confuses me about that is why we went out and got Miotti. Because couple of games he's played, he's been really, really good, and he's not anything to do with the Scotland setup. There's no Argentina games just now. There's no reason for him to be mucking about carrying water on the sidelines. He should be in the squad. I don't get it. That's a weird one.
Yeah.
And I think that's Dunky Weir is a great player and has been a great player for Scotland, Glasgow, and Edinburgh in the past. But I'm not. I think Glasgow and Edinburgh want to play a certain way, and then not too dissimilar ways, because it's this idea of having kind of top-down approach to Scottish rugby. There's a Scottish way of playing, and the clubs are supposed to play it, and the pro teams are supposed to play it. But Dunky Weir occasionally has flashes of being able to play it, but he can't play it consistently across 60 or 70 minutes.
No, he's always been a kicking 10. And kick the ball to either kick for touch or kick the ball to have it either return to us or more make them play. He's never been an attacking 10 as such.
Yeah. So should we leave Glasgow there, Johnny? Have you got any final thoughts?
No, I think that's we've kind of covered everything. It is just like the same old. We get ourselves in a position where, and the most annoying thing about it is, you can usually tell with about half an hour left if we're going to lose the game.
Mm-hmm.
And 99 times out of 100, if I sit there at 50 minutes and go, we're going to lose this game, then we do. And I did that happened on Saturday night, because I was speaking to a couple of our pals who are Scarlets fans, and actually Rhiannon, friend of the pod, Rhiannon, who's been on before, she's a Scarlets fan, and she wasn't even watching it until I said to her with half an hour to go, I think we're going to lose this game, and then she turned it on, and sure enough, we lost. Because you can see it happening every single time. If it feels like we're going to lose, then almost every time we lose. And it's just getting a bit frustrated now.
Yeah, fair enough. And the opposite, Craig, was Edinburgh at the weekend, where you're 8 points down and a man in the bin, and then that happens.
Yeah, I was of Johnny's opinion when I watched the first 5 minutes. The first 10 minutes, I'm sitting there going, oh man, we're all over the place here. We're scrambled defence constantly. And I kind of thought that we were going to have our hands full with Connaught, because the Connaught are well known for their attack, because their defence is so poor that they have to attack all the time and score more tries than you to win games. And they only had two players away to Ireland, so I expected them to come over and it to be a close game. I was hoping for the win. I was expecting the win, but I thought it was going to be a close game. And then all of a sudden, what a turnaround! And it shows that in complete opposite to Glasgow, we're managing our players the right way, and we've signed well. We're using the players that we've signed. We're talking about, is it Miotti? Miotti. We've brought in 2 Argentinians and we're using them. Immelman again, at 15 looked fantastic after my initial jitters when I saw him for the first couple of games. His kicking from hand wasn't looking all that great, and I was worried about it. And then people like Christine, who I've never been convinced with Christine, because I always felt he took into contact far too much. Started delivering passes as he did, and it was quite something to behold.
Yeah, but I suppose you've got that. I think there's I suppose if the feeling around Glasgow is one of doom and despair, it's the opposite feeling at Edinburgh, and I suppose that carries into the team. So a guy like Christine, who maybe hasn't had as many chances this season as he had the last couple of years, kind of comes in and is able to kind of slot in that way and play the systems.
Very much so, and he looked. I think he played last weekend as well, and he looked pretty good then. But nothing went. To that we can. The work he did defensively, the work he did in attack, and then that pass that he put into Immelman for, I think it was the third or the fourth try. And one of the comments on Twitter was, he put that pass in, and the guy and Immelman was at full chat, and the cameraman couldn't keep up with the pass because he missed it. He just about missed him catching it. It was just phenomenal. So yeah, a very very strong performance. But again, whatever as I've said before, for us, for Edinburgh, it comes from a strong set piece, and our forward play is very very good, and it gives us the ability to gives the backs the ability to use the ball as they want.
Yeah. Should we talk about Blair Kinghorn, Johnny? I'm going to make you talk about Blair Kinghorn.
No, that's fine. I didn't see the game live because I was out at the shops, but every Edinburgh fan I know was gleefully updating me on how well Blair Kinghorn was playing, because that's apparently my life now. But I did go back and watch the highlights, and he was really really good. He's developed a lot at 10 this season. Since he's been given an extended chance to do it, he's put in some really really good performances. And at the end of the day, that can only be good for everyone, to be honest. That's what we want. A bit more competition for Scotland, more consistency for the two pro teams. I don't know what you want. He was good.
Yeah. Well, that's it. He was good. And I think it's after the France game, Craig, I kind of feel like he maybe needed that. Kind of, he's had a bit of a rough Six Nations so far, in that he's not that you pay attention to what we're saying on the podcast, but we kind of, I suppose, have captured the mood elsewhere of what's the point of him being on the bench. And that, again, that's no reflection of him. And against France, maybe, Scotland lost the shape a little bit. I'm not sure that's entirely down to Blair Kinghorn, but like getting that chance to play, a prolonged game of rugby at 10 against a difficult team. And like I said, some of the passing has been something that he's been pulled up on before, but his passes are, you can see him develop every game, and there's obviously something there the coaches see that other people don't, because Mike Blair is describing as potentially world class now.
Yeah, Mike Blair, Gregor Townsend, the new attacking coach, who I've forgotten his name. A person I trust immensely when it comes to that, Pete Horn, are all telling us that that wherever he's put, he'll try 100%. He'll work as hard as he can. He's a professional athlete, and for me, what I don't want is for anyone else to start putting the oar in and moving him anywhere else now. Either let him play 15 or play 10. And that's it. I don't want to, I was laughing at Alan McDonald saying, hashtag Kinghorn for 12. Cut that out. I don't want to see him at 12, because I want him to, unless it's with Finn at 10 and him at 12. But I think, he's going to be, it's obvious that people want him at 10 within the Scottish setup. They wouldn't have taken a chance on him or an experiment with him in the Six Nations that we could have won, or we had the opportunity to win. This is a calculated position that put him in. And so and I would like to say, and if everybody who's been listening, I wasn't one of those people who was saying that he shouldn't be on the bench and he shouldn't, what is he doing here? And oh my God, this doom and gloom. I was glad he was there, because I think he is an emerging talent. He has always been he's a centurion for the club. He's played a lot of times for the club. He's done a very, very good job for the club, and I think he's played very well for Scotland when he's been asked to. He's made a couple of mistakes, but who else, our world class 15 and 10 have been making plenty of mistakes too.
Is the problem though not that for a long time the attraction with Blair Kinghorn was that he was really versatile? Like that was the thing. That's what everybody loved about Blair Kinghorn for the first couple of years, is that he was a great 15, he was a great winger. They've moved him to 10 now. He's becoming a great 10. Like for a while, the whole attraction was that he was versatile enough to play any of those positions. So I think it makes sense to stick him either at 15 or at 10, but then you lose a lot of what attracted the coaches to him in the first place, because they wanted the fact that he could play a lot of positions.
There's talk, there seems to be talk with Mike Blair and Gregor Townsend that he can slot in at 13 as well now.
Mm.
And I don't know, obviously there's a massive difference between playing 15 and 10. I don't know and whether or not how specialised 13 is. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously Chris Harris does an exceptional job. Is an absolutely exceptional player at 13, and there are exceptional players at 13. But I don't know how specialised 13 is compared to say 10 and 15. Somebody will tell me different, but it seems to be a place that, so long as you know where to stand and you can hit it up and you know where you're supposed to be when the calls are made.
Defensively, there's a lot more to 13 nowadays.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to run a defensive line from 13. I think that's the bit that takes the most to go up from being a good 13 to being a great 13. The most work comes not in developing what you can do, but your ability to run the defensive line around you. And I think that would worry me about him just getting shoved there.
But that's a transferable skill, though, because if he's a 10 and he's doing that, he would be doing that at 10. It's a different place in the line, but if the skill is then that you can communicate with others outside them, then I don't think 13's too much of a shift from 10. I mean, it's not like scrum; they're asking to play scrum half.
Yeah, I think
the versatility thing doesn't worry me so much, because I think more and more nowadays, more and more players are versatile now and can slot in 2, if not 3 positions.
I don't understand why him and Hastings haven't both been on the bench. To be perfectly honest, that would be my choice, because then that gives you not only covering all the positions, but it gives you the option of different game plans, because you've got 2 different options at 10 to bring on.
But then it goes back to all the conversations that are being had, is that they are training up to be a 10. He's a 10 now. Mm-hmm. He can play at fullback, and he can slot in at 12 and 13 or on the wing if needed. So again, if we're at a 6-2 split on the bench, then he's a perfect person to have on the bench. But for example, this weekend, I'd like to see him starting at 10, because I think this is the opportunity for you to then say, right, we're selling this guy as a 10. We're telling everyone that he's a 10. Finn's not having the greatest time at the moment. Right, let's play 10.
See, my only problem with that, and it's not because I don't want Kinghorn to play 10, but who plays 15? Because this is my problem with Kinghorn being in the squad where other people weren't the whole way through, is that he was our only option as a backup 10 for the first 3 weeks of the Six Nations, and he was also our only option as a backup 15. So what's happened now is that Finn and Hoggy have got fairly complacent, because there isn't competition. Well, there is competition for both their positions, but it's from the same person. So they know that actually they're fine. That's why I'm so happy to see Ross Thompson and Adam Hastings.
Yeah, but you're not going to see
for all of them.
Scotland captain not starting next weekend at 15.
One option would be, and I think you're right, Craig, and it's whether or not, again, we've talked about this before, whether or not Gregor Townsend has the cojones to pull something like this, is there's a situation in which everybody can win and you can not upset Finn. in that you take him as your water carrier and you drop him out the squad altogether and say it's a chance for others to get game time. Look, it's only Italy in inverted commas, because I think the depth we've got are good enough to drop Finn to be in a water carrier and pass some messages on the field. You start King on, you put Hastings on the bench, and Hastings can then do the King on thing if he covers 10 and 15.
I take Craig's point about him being the captain. I just think that the person who most needs shaking around and completely
It's Hogg.
dropped
Yeah, I
is
agree.
Hoggy.
Oh yeah,
Like I'd keep Finn and drop Hoggy personally, but then
I
I
agree,
just
actually.
played Kinghorn at 15.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you that. But I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
And watch this tomorrow. I'm going to be absolutely.
Yeah.
You know,
I was going to say, let's not get too deep into squad selections for tomorrow, because by the time most
Yeah.
people listen to this, it'll be completely, they'll be like going, I can't believe they said that. They drop Hoggy. Christ, he's playing prop. But yeah, it's
it's the way it is, I suppose. You know, it's just. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be
So, I
interesting
mean, I want to kind of come back to Embra, though,
of course, please do.
because I mean, Alan McDonald makes the point, Craig, that it was impressive that an experienced Embra side pulled it together and turned it around before halftime without coaching intervention.
Mm.
Now, obviously, there'll be coaching intervention and that messages get passed on the pitch, but I suppose, they're not having to go in the sheds and be given a talking to or shown video footage of where the gaps are. They were able to kind of problem solve on the hoof, which is, as Johnny said, something that Glasgow are currently struggling with.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, they only went 8-3 down. It wasn't like it was, it wasn't like they were looking at, they'd let 3 tries in the first 20 minutes and they were kind of having to panic and change things around. They'd only they'd only gone ahead by a try, so it wasn't. I don't think it was that. It was things didn't go to plan, yes, but I don't think they were out of control and they had to turn it around. I think things weren't things had they'd been startled by Connaught's jump out the gate and they started a bit slow. But then when they got back into, they got the forward pack working hard, creating quick ball, they started to play as they needed to play, and having the strike runners that they have in Boffelli, Immelman, Moyano, Blair Kinghorn again busting through tackles, offloading the ball inside, etc. It just, it was a very, very strong performance, and so I don't actually think it was too much to be panicked about. I think it was just it wasn't a great start.
Yeah. In terms of depth, Johnny, I'm interested in your take on this, because Embra seem to have a lot of depth right across the board at the minute. Is that the same at Glasgow, or is it that players are not being played where they need to be played, or is there maybe a lack of depth in certain positions?
Second row is a bit thin for Glasgow. Other than that, I think we've got just as good depth as Edinburgh are doing. We're just not always using it properly. We've spoken about Miotti already. We've got Josh Mackay, who can play 10, who was playing on the wing on Saturday afternoon. We've got Fafita that's not really getting used. We've got Seb Cancellieri's not really getting used. That's as well as Rufus McLean, obviously, Kyle Stain. We've got really good centres. We've got Cole Forbes as well. I mean, Glasgow are absolutely falling over backs in almost every position. Loads of really good back rows, a couple of pretty decent front rows, and just for some reason, they just don't seem to be getting used right at the right time.
You got Simon Bergen, world's fittest prop.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some really good front rows.
Yeah.
I think if you look at though, I think, and Mike Blair said it all on the weekend. That team that have played on Friday night, have already played 3 games together as a group of youngsters, and he's put his faith in them, and he's just said, right, you need to step up. It's time to go. Let's go. And I think that is a slight difference Because, for example, Tom Gordon was, he burst on the scene. Everybody said, wow, look at this guy. This guy's going to be phenomenal for Glasgow. And he did a very, very good job. Then disappeared for, what, I don't know how many games. And then it's this whole thing with Glasgow. And I think you just said it there, Johnny, and I'm going over old ground, I guess, but just not using the right people at the right time. And it just seems, okay, Tom Gordon was playing at the weekend, and so was Cole Forbes and things. But these are players that they burst onto the scene, and everybody said that this is the new Glasgow team, and they're going to be phenomenal. And all of a sudden, they're not being used, and they're not even on the bench.
Yeah, then that's one difference between Glasgow and Edinburgh is like you say, Edinburgh have got a really good core of young Edinburgh players, and Glasgow haven't got so much of that. Like we have got a bunch of really good names, like I just rattled off, but they've all come from different places, and they've all come this season. Whereas we've got Tom Gordon, we've got the props that are there. Ollie Smith, Jamie Dobie. There are a few that are young players that have come through with Glasgow or coming through together. But our team seems to be a lot more of bringing in different players from different places, and because they're not being used properly together, they're not getting the same chance to gel that the Edinburgh team are getting.
And you've only got one Super Six franchise, and that's not even in Glasgow.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't get 3 Super 6 teams like Edinburgh did.
There's many things to look at that, because that could be a factor. It also could be a factor that Danny Wilson is not using, bringing in the players that he's doing isn't selling itself as a cohesive team, isn't aiding the cohesion of the team, because there are so many different people from different places. Because if you look at Edinburgh, especially the forward pack, there's a lot of young lads there that are from Scotland who have come through Super 6, etc., and they're doing a very, very good job, So we'll wait and see.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move off the URC. Should we talk about? Should we talk about the weekend then? And what's coming? I mean, we're not going to talk about player selection because, like I said, we're recording this on a Wednesday, and the team's out tomorrow, so people will know within the next 24 hours who's playing. But I guess if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said Italy will be treating Scotland like any other team now because of where they are in the pecking order. However, I think after the last 2 games, I kind of feel that I've got a horrible nagging doubt of we are now suddenly the team that Italy are going to target for a win this year, Johnny.
Yeah, it's pretty worrying because it feels like that was the thing for a really long time, and we thought that finally it wasn't going to be the case, and yet here we are. And that's what kind of worries me about shaking it up too much. I feel like there is some shaking up in the Scotland team that needs to be done, but I wouldn't go too far because the last thing we want to do is end up giving ourselves a fright against Italy, because we need a bonus point. That's like non-negotiable.
Yeah. Did Italy worry you, Craig?
They see us as a wounded animal, so I think they're after us. But I honestly don't feel because the Scotland team themselves are needing to pull themselves together, and they're going to hopefully have a reaction as well. So I actually think we're going to put a decent win on over them at the weekend. So to answer your question, is that no, they don't worry me very much.
Yeah, and I guess they've got lots of good young players, Johnny. But actually, when you look at how they were playing, I mean, they played well for periods against England, but then you kind of remember this is a pretty poor England side by England standards. And I'm not saying that England are rubbish. Obviously, we all believe that anyway. It's intrinsic in our, it's in our DNA. But it's a pretty poor England side at the minute, and But even against when they were causing England problems, they just didn't really seem to know what they were doing. They don't really seem to have any shape or cohesion. The coach just seems to be sat there like he's kind of completely disinterested whenever the camera flashes on him.
Yeah. I think that they're at a point in their development now where all of these young players are pretty exciting, really up for it. I think some of them have got a lot of talent, but they're just not. This is going to come back to bite me. They're just not quite there yet in terms of being the finished product. I think you're right that like when it gets to the important parts, when it gets to defending their own 22, or when it gets to finishing off an attack and move, they just don't quite have it yet. So yeah, there are things that make me quite nervous, like the dedication that they all have, the excitement that they all have. I could see them getting themselves right up for it, but I do think they're just not quite there in the final phase yet.
But it's the usual thing. This weekend is going to be down to Scotland and what Scotland turns up. It's not. Italy have shown us, especially in the club game, they've got a great. They've got forwards that can hurt you, and they can do a fantastic job, but their cohesion and their link play lets them down quite dramatically, and they get tired. And once you're always going to try and beat an Italian team in the last 20 minutes or the last 40 minutes. So, as for us, it's what Scotland's going to turn up. Are we going to have a Finn Russell and a Hogg who are going to try everything themselves and aren't going to play it part, or are they going to absolutely play at their skins and we're going to put 3 or 4 tries past them with no response from Italy? So it's more the onus is on Scotland than saying, right, what Scotland's going to turn up rather than Italy, because we kind of know what we're expecting from Italy.
Yeah, well, Neil Barrascal on his Patreon saying the press here, Neil's out on Italy, are basically building the game up as one they could win. I think the worry for me is Italy remind me a lot of Scotland under Scott Johnson, where he basically blooded a lot of young players.
Mm.
And I don't think it'll be long before Italy are competitive again. And I think the Scotland game for Italy is their Calcutta Cup, Johnny. Every year,
yeah,
it's the game that they will be up for this game, because they don't fear us in the way that they don't fear us in the way that maybe they fear other teams.
No, and I honestly thought that we were past that. Like, just once, I'd like to see Italy target another game. Like I thought maybe they towards the start after the first weekend of the tournament, I thought maybe they would target Wales, and now that's probably not going to happen. I mean, they might. I don't know. Wales don't look much better than us, but I still think this is the one that they reckon that they can win.
Yeah.
It's the Massimo Tita Cup now.
It is.
If I've pronounced that right. So we now have a trophy for every single game that we play. So that's what 8 trophies you could potentially win now for Scotland if you got a Grand Slam.
Yeah, that's a nice tribute to him, I have to say.
It's very nice.
It's
He deserves it as well.
Yeah, absolutely, a fitting tribute, But yeah, 8 trophies we could be rattling around in the hallways of Murrayfield if we actually got our act together.
Yeah. The other big bit of news this week is that Duhan van der Merwe was out for the rest of the Six Nations. Now, should we discuss this here as a bit of a pre-hands in the ruck?
Yeah,
and Duhan's red card.
I'm sure everyone is on the edge of their seat to hear what we've got to say about it.
I mean, it was a red card. That's my take on it, because it wasn't a handoff.
I'm not angry that it's a red card. If he hadn't got a red card for it, I wouldn't be saying he'd got away with one. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like I wasn't surprised to see him red carded, but I would have been equally unsurprised to see him not be red carded.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of how I feel about it, is you can't. There's so many different shades of grey within disciplinary decisions and on-field referee decisions that are made, and then in the aftermath is that could have easily been a yellow. It could have easily been a referee making a boys will be boys decision. He'd be wrong, but
Yeah.
you could see that happening in similar circumstances. I think what bothered me though was in the aftermath of the number of people that came to me saying it's a handoff, the game's gone soft. It's like it's not a handoff because you do a handoff with the palm of your hand, and that's in the law book.
Mm.
So the moment that he hasn't used the palm of his hand and he's used another part of his body and it's made contact with the head, he's in trouble. And that's what it's a bit like saying, well, he tried to do a tackle, but he smashed the shoulder into the guy's face. It doesn't matter what he's trying to do. It's kind of what did he do? That's what matters,
Yeah.
Craig.
What? Are you Craig?
Yeah, it's difficult because I looked at it a couple of times and went, oh, I don't know about that, you know, and it's a talking piece for a lot of people, and it's one of those things that lots of people are going to have one feeling about it, and lots of people are the other way around have a similarly opposite view. It's a red card to me. I could see it getting downgraded to yellow if someone was a little bit more lackadaisical is the wrong word, but a little bit more relaxed about the laws and maybe said, look, it was he's obviously gone for a handoff and he's made a mistake, so you could probably bring mitigation at that. But I don't think there's any wiggle room in mitigation for that, because they don't say, oh, he was actually going for it. Well, they do. They say he was bending his knees and he was going in for a tackle, and unfortunately, his shoulder has hit the guy in the head. So they do give slight mitigation on those sort of things, but it's a difficult one. I find it very difficult to be on one side.
Yeah, I think the problem is that, and we've got a comment on Twitch. Someone said it probably should have been a red, but the 3 weeks is harsh. I think
that's my exact take, to be honest.
But the problem is, and I think all players now must be aware of this. If you go into an appeal and you say, I accept what I did was wrong, but the moment you say but and then add some kind of mitigation or defense yourself, then I think, from memory, I think that all kind of mitigation and taking account of good character goes out the window, because they're like going, okay, we're going to try you on your defense. We're going to look at what you're going to say in your defense, and then we'll just apply the rules. Whereas if you go in and say, I'm terribly sorry, Governor, and doff your cap to the disciplinary panel, they'll go, oh well, he gifts aids every time he goes to a National Trust property.
There's a lot of charity work here,
and he looks after stray cats. So reduce it to, we'll say no more about it. But the moment you say but, Johnny, it seems to be that but then gets you into trouble, because the moment you try and kind of almost defend yourself, I think the rules are that they can't then take account of mitigation.
Yeah, there's a lot goes on in the background of a disciplinary hearing, and not a lot of it always makes sense. But that's one that has always confused me, because I don't understand why everybody involved couldn't have just looked at that and gone, okay, yeah, no, that's definitely a red card. But like the boy from Bristol who got a 4-week ban for using his shoulder on somebody's head, got it reduced to 3 weeks because he did the tackle course. Did the tackle course last week, came back this week, hit somebody in the face with his shoulder again, got sent off on it, and he got 4 weeks, and Duhan gets 3 weeks. Like, how does that make sense?
I think the reason is, and it's a problem that World Rugby has, is that the disciplinary process is run by barristers and judges. So if you, in England certainly, if you judicially review someone, if it's done on the papers, so that's the initial kind of like, I'm going to have a crack at this, here's the papers, what do you think? Then they make a judgment. They might make a judgment one way or the other. But I think then if you push it to a full trial because you're being an arsehole and you want to argue your point, you get less leeway
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They'll start looking at awarding costs, and they'll start looking at saying, why are you wasting our time with this? But I think if it's done on the papers, if you turn up and say, I'm terribly sorry, Governor, I doff the cap to you, I shouldn't have done it, then they're like, fine, you're not wasting my time. I'll take account of your good behavior and the fact you love your mother, and off you go, have a week. Whereas I think that the moment they feel like that you are putting in a defense and that you're going to take up their time with making them think about that defense, then the idea of giving you any sort of mitigation completely goes out the window. I think I think it's too tied to how court cases are run. Because if you take something to full trial and it's frivolous, then a judge will absolutely hammer you. And I think it's similar. I think that's the kind of principles that they're applying. I don't think it's right.
Yeah, because you could, mind you could argue it both ways, because because he didn't, he did. It looks like a mistaken handoff. Kyle Rowe didn't go off for an HIA. Wasn't lying on the ground rolling around with his hands in his head. He wasn't affected negatively with it. So you could all of those things, if he had kind of gone, yeah, I'm sorry I did it, I didn't mean to do it, and left it at that, then yeah. But I think unfortunately, I think if he's argued it a little bit further, then they've just kind of thrown the book at.
Yeah.
I'm not gutted, because he's one of the players who I would have rotated out anyway. So
Yeah. I think it's probably a good thing for him and Scotland that he's not available, because
Gives us a few more options.
It does, yeah. And I don't think he's had a particularly great Six Nations either, but who has for Scotland?
Yeah.
Darcy Graham.
Darcy Graham has. Yeah, that's true.
And the greatest showman.
Yeah. There are players who have. Fair enough. There's two. There's two. I think that's probably it. The other thing I'd say is that for some reason I was inundated when I was saying that the Duhan thing was a red card. I got loads of what I think were Russian bots on Twitter telling me the game's gone soft. So I think what my view is, I'm doing with it for the war effort by distracting them with their rugby disciplinary issues.
One thing I would like to say is that there was breaking news earlier on that there's going to be an under-18 women's festival at the Dam Health in the foreseeable future, and it's a World Rugby festival. So there's going to be teams from all around the world coming to play at the Dam Health under-18 women's rugby. So it's going to be fantastic. So
excellent.
That's a positive move.
And yesterday was International Women's Day.
Yes, and I think we're going to talk about that.
We will talk about that. We will. Yeah. We'll get onto that in the Patreon. If you want to listen to our Patreon podcast, you can sign up to the Patreon, patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast for £3 a month. And that will get you access to the bonus weekly podcast that we do, where we kind of talk about hands in the ruck and some wider issues to do with rugby. You can find us we're on Twitter, Twitch, we're on YouTube. If you want to watch us live, if you want to listen to the podcast on audio format, it's on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you can find podcasts. We will put out on Friday lunchtime. We're hoping to have Robbie Owen from Squidge Rugby is going to join us to preview the Italy match on Friday lunchtime, where we'll talk about the lineups. That'll go out as an audio podcast to everyone, and it'll be live streamed for our patrons. So you have something to listen to on Saturday morning to get yourself in the mood for the game. We're going to go and record the Patreon podcast now. But for everybody who is just listening to the normal one, it's goodbye from me and goodbye from Craig and Johnny.
Bye.
Bye-bye.